Hello, this is Greg Allison from Green Greg's Garden and Worm Farm, coming to you today in the second installment of the Grid Down series. In the first installment, I talked about what DHS didn't tell us. In this segment, I'm going to talk about root causes, what can bring down the grid. I'm going to talk about the likelihood of those causes, and I'm going to talk about why it's so hard to fix these things. What's so tough? The vulnerabilities in our system. And then I'm going to do some more installments of this. I'm going to do an installment where I'm going to talk about the consequences, how bad this can be, what it will cause. Some people say, why worry about it? We lived without a grid, for thousands of years until just recently. That's true. But our modern society has consequences that you haven't imagined. And I'm going to cover those in the very next segment. And the segment after that is going to be about what you can do to take care of yourself, and more importantly, I think, what you can do to help prevent this. Well, they're both important, and each their own. How you can take care of yourself and how you can help take care of your neighbors and our country and the world. Because I believe if we take action now, we can prevent this. And that's why I'm in it. Why do I do this? I don't make money in power grid defense. I spend my money in it. I have a day job. I have another job. My job professionally, I work at NASA as a contractor. And I'll just show you. Some people doubted my credentials in the previous video. Oh, who's this hillbilly hick guy? Well, this hillbilly hick also works at NASA. How about that? This worm farmer has a job building rockets. Yeah, imagine that. And also, though, I do take this stuff seriously. I'm involved in quite a few things, like I'm a member of an organization trying to protect the grid, InfraGard. You can see my membership number. And I deal with people. I just went down and briefed a few months ago, and recently spoke again with the Emergency Management Agency Director in Alabama, Brian Hastings. So, yeah, I do these things. But why do I do them? I've understood for a long time that our grid can go down and other catastrophes could affect our society. I'm a member of a space society, and I've always worried about cosmic catastrophes. And so I started trying to tell people why we needed to go into space based on cosmic catastrophes. And guess what? I discovered that the grid was a lot more immediate catastrophe than those cosmic catastrophes. And my dream of people living, working, and settling in space wasn't going to happen if we didn't take care of ourselves. And first I thought, well, I better start prepping. And I discovered prepping's not enough. We've got to really work to stop this from happening if we can. And that's what I'm going to be covering in this series. So that's why it's important for you to watch this whole series, is because you can do something about it. And in light of that, so what I want you to do is subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. And if you are subscribed and haven't done this, and if you subscribe, please bang the update notification bell, because that bell will give you notification of videos that I release, so that you can see the updates in this series. I also do videos on worm farming, gardening, and aquaponics, many things like that, growing microgreens. Basically, these are the basics for how you can grow your own food and survive in the tough times that I think are coming at us. We have several challenges in front of us, and my channel is dedicated to mainly homesteading type things, power grid defense, things that you can do to protect yourself, to cover yourself, your family, your neighborhood, your society. That's what we're trying to cover here. So please support this channel. And for those that have subscribed, I say a hearty thank you. Now, before we get into this presentation, I'll just show you a couple of other things. This is the placard from my group, Power Grid Defense Committee. That's our podium placard. And I'll show you some other things here down the road here in a minute. But I'm going to move this little window here so we can get into this presentation, and I may open it up here again in just a second. A little bit more of my background here. So this is Power Grid Defense, root causes. And that's an ugly picture. You never want to see that. I hope we never have to see this picture here of everybody standing by and seeing all this stuff in the atmosphere from maybe a supercharged aurora from the sun and watching our power grid fry. That is not a day we want to see. And for some reason, this presentation is not rocking and rolling. Well, now, look, I don't intend to be the prophet of doom. In fact, as I tell a lot of my friends, hey, no matter how tough it gets, no matter how bad it happens to be, there's a silver lining around every mushroom cloud. Hey, you got to start with a joke, right? Honestly, we're here for hope. The hope is that you can take care of yourself and our society. That's what we're here about. And what you're going to see here, look at this. This is the program book for the conferences I did last one. I've done 2 of these conferences. Like I said, I'm definitely involved in this. This is me as the conference chair talking to people in a program book. And I'm also involved in a film called the Black Sky Event Film. And the link is down here. I'll probably put it in the credits down below in the notes. And you can see some of the speakers in this film. These are also, a lot of these people spoke at my conference, a fair number of them. Go to powergriddefense.org, also below, and you will see that. In fact, I think I've got, yeah, powergriddefense.org. The Black Sky event, you can see I'm here along with all these other people, and I'll be in that film. Check the trailer out to that film. The trailer is on that website. It's most interesting. As I mentioned in a previous video where I was standing beside my log barn, yeah, I'm the same guy standing beside that log barn. He said, surely this isn't Green Grids. Oh, yeah, I am. I just got my hair in a ponytail. So, excuse me. As I said in the previous video, the power grid is our weakest link. And I mentioned, I'm just covering a little bit of recap here for those that are new to this, that 9 out of 10 Americans could die of starvation and societal collapse in a nationwide blackout lasting at least a year. As I mentioned before, it'll be more than a year, and I'll go more into that in a moment here. What can you expect you're not going to have? Fuel to pump water. I mean, you don't have power to pump the water, the fuel. Your ATMs, cash registers, elevators, all these things that we're used to, air conditioning is not going to work. Your prescription drugs are not going to be available. Your bank accounts, oh yeah, most of your money in the bank is going to go poof because it's all digital ones and zeros. And the banks aren't going to be online for a long time. So all that money, your retirement accounts, government assistance, how's your job going to pay you? How are you going to get to your job? And how's anything going to function there? You can forget most of that stuff. I hope if you're an emergency services provider or a law enforcement individual that you can still go to work and maintain law and orders to keep our society glued together. But anyway, that's another story. Life in big cities without power will be a nightmare. So but we're going to go today into the root causes. How could this possibly happen? What are the potential root causes? And what's the probability, the likelihood of this happening to us? And I'm going to tell you, it's very likely in your lifetime. So the root causes, briefly up front here, are solar coronal mass ejections, electromagnetic pulse, EMP, a high-altitude nuclear weapon, direct kinetic terrorist attack, you know, with the AK-47s. New Madrid earthquake could do it. What's the probability of these things? Well, let me go back up here to these root causes that I just enumerated. Most people have commented in my previous video that none of that's going to happen. That can't happen. And it will absolutely be our government that will do it. Well, I don't know. You know, there are potential rogue agents, rogue elements in the deep state. I don't trust the deep state. Definitely not, at least at the, you know, especially the guys at the top. So I'm not going to dwell on that too much. I hope they would not be the cause of it. And if they would, you know, they should know that there's going to be consequences to pay. Other than that, perhaps it is their fault, simply because they're not taking care of us to prevent these other things. But you know, a word of warning to them would be they better watch out if the grid does go down, because they're going to get the blame irregardless. So if you're working in the government, you better do everything you can to keep this from happening and provide security for the population after it happens, because the people are going to be blaming you irregardless in any event. Let's talk about probability of this. NASA has estimated that the probability of a CME hitting the Earth on the level of the Carrington event, which we're going to go into in a moment, which occurred in 1859, is 12% per decade. Wow, that's pretty high. That's a lot of probability, but that's not the only event that could get us. Well, I don't know what the probability of a terrorism attack is. I know we have a lot of enemies. We have a lot of people that just aren't our friend. In fact, I feel like we've made a lot of these people our enemies. You know, if you're going to go attack a terrorist, and as an individual, and try to take him out, and you wait till he's at a big wedding party with 40 or 50 other family members, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, and all the little kids, and then you attack and kill all them, you might have killed one guy, but you just made hundreds of other enemies that's going to hate you. So we've done a lot of that. I'm not here to debate all that stuff. I'm just here to tell you that we've not been good at making friends of late. So consider what that means. So we'll go to the next chart here. Let's talk about solar coronal mass ejections, CMEs. Carrington event took place over a period of a couple of days in 1859. It was so bright that miners got up early in Colorado and started to fix breakfast in the wee hours of the morning because they thought the sun was coming up, but it was the aurora. It was that bright. People were able to read newspapers outside by it. It was brilliant. It was all the way down to the Caribbean, Cuba, places like that. It started fires in telegraph stations, sparks on loose paper. They disconnected batteries and everything, and still could send signals. A lot of the wires burnt. Telegraph wires burnt. It was a very powerful storm. That storm, if it occurred today, would absolutely take out our power grid. And these storms occur. There's evidence that these things have been occurring with a fair frequency through history. And there's nothing saying that the Carrington event was anything near the strongest CME that the sun could put out. And there's evidence that there's maybe a stronger one in the 1700s. The railroad event on 14 May 1921, after my father, who's still alive, check out the videos on him on my channel. He was born, well, let's say a month and 3 days before that. So in 1921, the railroad event actually caused some fires in a railroad station. What happens with the solar coronal mass ejection is it puts out a long wave type of electrical pulse. It's a long frequency, you might say low frequency, long wavelength, excuse me. So long conductors pick up a CME. It's called E3 in the spectrum of what kind of energies you get out of an EMP. It's just the E3 component of the CME. A nuclear explosion gives you E1, E2, and E3. I'll go into that when I go to nuclear. But this is long wave, so it gets picked up by long conductors like pipelines, power lines, and rail lines, and can go into your house. Now this stuff's going to jump surge protectors. It's going to jump all these things you've got in your house to protect you conventionally from normal power surges. It's going to burn your computers, your internal devices in your house if they're connected, and could set your house on fire. There could be lots of fires, and there's going to be no fire trucks to put them out. Think about that. So the railroad event was only a tenth as strong as the Carrington event. It is strongly believed that if it occurred today, due to the more interconnectivity of our network and the high voltage, long distance transmission lines we have today, that it would absolutely take those out. And that's our most vulnerable part. And I'm going to get into that before the end of this video. Also, the Hydro-Quebec event. Oh, I had commenters. Oh, the sun can't take out our power grid. The sun don't do that. It's already done it in areas. The Hydro-Quebec event, 13 March 1989, took out Quebec, the whole province. It also caused a fire in a substation in Salem, Massachusetts. Solar storm of 2012, 23 July. It missed us in our orbit by 9 days. That one was stronger than the Carrington event, or is believed to be by some sources. So if that hit us, oh boy, yeah, these things are real. They happen. And if you see my cursor here, that is a CME. I'm going to show you some more of those. Excuse me. This is the 2012 event. So maybe we missed the Mayan prophecy by few days in our orbit. Was that it? Anyway, this is the size of the Earth. It's small compared to the sun, small compared to these. But look at the next picture. See what these things spread out to? That is a CME, my friends. That is a photograph of a coronal mass ejection. Now, Earth would just be a little dot, maybe about that big right there is that bright spot compared to all this. Space is big, fortunately, and the sun shoots these out in different directions. They do spread out as they leave the sun, but fortunately, most of them have missed the Earth and missed us. Now you can see all these big things coming off the sun. Again, Earth would be just a little ball down in here. So to give you some idea, the CMEs are real. And what they do when they come off the sun is they engage with Earth's magnetosphere and compress it down practically to nothing if they're really large. So that is one of the radiation forms that can get us. EMP is from a nuclear device, and if it's at high altitude, it radiates out over a large area, high enough you could take out the entire United States. Electromagnetic pulse puts out 3 waveforms of energy. E1 is the shortwave energy. That's the energy that is picked up by small short conductors and could do things like fry your cell phone. Not pretty. E2 is like supercharged lightning. It's just boom, a bolt of electricity, pure raw electricity. You don't want to catch that. That would be ugly. E3 is that long wave stuff that can even travel into the ground to some extent. So in fact, it's often picked up by the ground leg of your transformers. So in order to stop the circuit, in fact, the way to protect the big transformers is put shunts in series, surge blockers on the ground tap of the transformer. So it can be done. We have the technology to fix these things. That's cheap to do. All right, so who could give us an EMP? Of course, we know that Russia and China could do that. They have the EMP superweapon technologies. And we know we have a lot of tension right now with China over the South China Sea. But the premier of China just recently said that, got his army motivated and told them that to expect war with the United States. Well, that could just be more saber rattling, probably is. But there's a lot of tension over Taiwan, South China Sea. We have tensions with Russia still over the Ukraine and Syria. And some people doubt Iran, but Iran technically has the capability to do this. And it is in their doctrine to hit us with an EMP if they should get more with us. I mean, if you think about it right now, there are a lot of people in the deep state in the United States, like John Bolton, who are just chomping at the bit for us to hit Iran. And if we hit Iran, they're definitely going to hit back in some fashion. So what is that going to be? Well, one of the things I mentioned in my previous video is that somebody told them that, hey, you could take out 9 critical substations in the United States, take out the whole power grid. This comment was made to the head of the Revolutionary Guard in Iran. And his reply, we've already got 20 targeted. So, don't accuse me of putting this stuff out there. They already know it. It's already in a public domain, and they're already out there discussing, and it's written in their military doctrine. So for whatever it is, it's out there. Will they do it? Will we do it? I'm here to tell you that this threat is real. That's the purpose today. I'm also going to tell you what you can do to help mitigate this threat for yourself and for our society. That's why we're in this. North Korea, they technically do have the capability. Will they do it? Again, who knows? Terrorist groups. Terrorist group? Yeah. That's what's special with your direct ballistic attack, like machine guns. But terrorist groups can do more. Small groups can accomplish amazing things. And that's what I'm going to show you in a minute. In fact, I'm going to show you what I did operating out of a garage 20 years ago on a shoestring budget, developing capabilities that only a couple decades before took a superpower to do. Yes, that is what you're going to see right now. And that it was balloon or barge launched rockets and raccoons out of the Gulf of Mexico with my programs High Altitude Liftoff and a company I spun off from HAL 5 and the High Altitude Liftoff program called the High Altitude Research Corporation, HARC, with these raccoon missions. A raccoon is a rocket launched from a balloon. And here I am in a garage late one night working on this stuff. small team of people working in the garage, building rocket components like a solid rocket motor, nozzle. Here I am on a phone coordinating things. Here's some people working on an oxidizer tank. Here's a vacuum chamber. Yeah, there's a lathe back here somewhere. I believe right in here. So operating out of a garage. This was our avionics shop, a separate garage. And this was our Space Launch 2 avionics module there for their Halo program. This is all done by a club. In fact, the club was and still is HAL 5, the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society, which also sponsored the Power Grid Defense Conference, which I was president of. I founded it in 1983 as president, spent 22 years as president, had a 12-year hiatus, 1-year hiatus in the previous 22 years, and just got reelected a few weeks ago. Actually, not even that long ago, a few days ago. So I'm president of HAL 5 again, like I don't have enough to do. But anyway, this was our Space Launch 2 rocket right here in the Gulf of Mexico on the back of a barge. In fact, this barge was the NASA Pearl River barge. This particular mission was a joint mission between us and NASA to test the capability to launch things from the Gulf. My previous Raccoon, we launched out over the Atlantic Ocean from North Carolina's Topsail Beach. And that's me. That's the rocket. And we made the Guinness Book of World Records, Millennium Edition, for that launch. Page 183. This was my mother's version of the book, so it's kind of marked up in here. But I can show it to you. This may be hard to see. And it's kind of broken up, and all these little articles she stuffed in here are falling out. My late mom, I got the book. She passed away in 2007. Love her and miss her dearly. But anyway, so pick up all these little loose pieces that fell out. I should have grabbed another version of that book. That's just the one I found. But in any event, this rocket was put together by a club operating out of a garage on the rocket and another garage on the avionics. A couple of garages, a small group of people operating off a shoestring budget. The other picture I showed you was entirely privately funded, and this one was, the rocket was privately built. NASA just gave us a ride on this one, but I went out in the Gulf of Mexico a few times later on my own on my small company, Hark. I did all this on the side because I had a different day job working at NASA. This is our balloon inflation for the Halo SL2 balloon. It's a freestanding inflation on the deck of a boat because we matched the wind with the direction and speed of the boat. So we can stand it straight up. I'm going the wrong direction here. This is a subsequent project called the Balloon Launch Return Vehicle. Basically, we developed a guidance and navigation system so we could remote pilot a rocket launch from a balloon with a little shuttle-looking wing body. Pitot tube up front, camera on board, hybrid rocket system here. The motor fuel grain is in here, oxidizer tank there. And that's Tim Pickett's. He went off to start a couple of other companies since then, spun off from that, originally in Ride Propulsion. Now there's I don't know, Pickett's Research, something like that. This was a test launch of a subscale version of that. We did this in a phase 1 SBR when NASA Dryden paid for this for about $60,000, chump change. It's supposed to have been a paper study, but guess what? We actually built hardware. And this is us on the back of the C. Michael Calais utility boat out in the Gulf of Mexico. That's Mike Smith. He was with what was Windsor and Raven at the time, and I think they're Aerostar, which is an aerospace balloon corporation. He was chief engineer. That little blonde tuft of hair there is me, way down there on my hand, sticking up, pushing that thing off. The hybrid fuel grain is not explosive, by the way. So, and this is where we inflated the balloon off the deck of a boat. This is the last balloon launch project I did out of the Gulf of Mexico. This was our Hark Cat's Prize rocket. The CAT stood for Cheap Access to Space. This thing's 17.5 foot long. This stuff in this gondola is over 300 pounds. And this was quite a launch here. And we operated this off of a utility boat known as the Mr. Offshore. This happened in October of 2000. That was 2 years earlier, 98. So as you can see, we were turning these launches around about every 18 months. And there was a period where we did 2 launches 4 months apart. The the SL2 rocket and the BLRV were like 4 months apart. And you can see this one was a year later. So we were busy. We did this on a shoestring budget, operating out of a garage with a small team of guys working mostly part-time. So you got a few other guys working together full-time with some budget. It would be amazing what they could do. That's the point I'm showing you these things for, because it took a superpower to launch to the edge of space just a couple of decades before we were doing this. Well, in the 40s, 50s. Well, that's when we were starting to hit that stuff. So think about that. So, but this was 20 years ago. We did this 20 years ago. What can people do today? That's why I'm showing you these pictures. That's our avionics. We built avionics for this to prove our altitude. This was our avionics system for launching the rocket, which went up on the balloon. And these bellows switches here were to keep it from the firing circuits open, so they wouldn't fire until it got up to a certain altitude that they were set for. We built 4 ground stations. So, you know, don't tell me a terrorist group can't do amazing things. And by the way, go to engineering schools in the United States and see who are studying engineering. You're going to find people from all over the world, from all groups and backgrounds, are very smart. Don't underestimate them. They're very smart, very intelligent. So going on to EMP, electromagnetic pulse. You will see on the left side of your screen, the Starfish Prime nuclear detonation in space. It was launched from a Redstone rocket, which was built on Redstone Arsenal, where the NASA center I work at is located. I work at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. It is located on Redstone Arsenal. And the Redstone rocket, which also is the rocket that launched our first astronaut in suborbital space, Alan Shepard, with the Redstone rocket. So, and that was not an orbital launch, by the way. It was a suborbital launch, but it was high enough to detonate a nuke. And it caused some problems in Hawaii. You know, it was a long distance from there. And by the way, EMPs are not as effective. Somebody commented somebody wrote about how EMPs wouldn't be effective in reciting this. Let me tell you something. The guy who they quoted is not a scientist or engineer. And by the way, at high altitude, if you go further north, the convergent magnetic field lines of Earth make it more intense. So they had some problems in Hawaii, even though this was a long way from there. If you did this over the United States, you will have problems. There have been tests of this stuff by the EMP Commission, and good guys really know what the threat is on this. You see here on the right, a regular nuke being detonated over the ground. And when these things are detonated, they cause problems in the near vicinity of military systems. That's why all military systems have to be so hardened. And all you do is with a altitude burst is you're moving that up. And what EMP does is the gamma rays out of the burst cascade electrons off of atoms in the atmosphere and cause a wave of electricity to move through the atmosphere. So if you're 480 kilometers, you know, a couple of 100 miles over the center of the United States, this is the region affected. And it shows you the field strength of what you would get. I'm going to tell you, that's enough to black out this entire region. Most of Mexico, Canada, and yeah, the entire United States. And all of Canada that's populated, and the major part of Mexico. And this is give you a picture of the same notion by altitude, because you know it's kind of like a radio antenna. The higher you are, the more coverage area you get. We just knew that from our balloons. With our balloons, the higher they flew, the farther we could communicate. We could relay signal to other people, and other people could pick up our signals. So we often use balloons for communication relays when we're doing our HALO program, and have done that with some of our subsequent HARC missions. So you can see here, 30 kilometers is not that high. I mean, we're talking, you know, balloon float altitudes here. So even if you don't have a rocket with your balloon, you could take out major portion of the grid And if you're taking out a portion like that over the Northeast, you got 100 million people without power automatically. 100 million people. Could you do it from a balloon? Heck yeah, they could. And a nuke payload would weigh less than that rocket I had slung in that gondola. Am I showing anything new that anybody hadn't never seen? No, they know this already. That's the scary part. So here's something to think about. In February to April, North Korea's Kim Jong-un threatened us with a nuclear strike. You know, he was rattling the saber hard. And he hadn't developed his systems as well as they're developed now, but he was still rattling the system hard. But a lot of things were going on then. And some people talk about a fractional orbital bombardment system, FOBs they call it. And there was an overflight of the North Korean satellite KMS-3 on 16 April 2013, right over Washington, D.C. So you don't have to have a reentry system. You don't have to have precision guidance, any of that kind of stuff to do an EMP. An EMP will do more damage to the United States than a direct nuclear strike. Everybody's worried about Kim Jong-un and said, oh, well, he don't have precision guidance. He don't have the reentry technology. For an EMP, it don't matter. You don't even want to mess with that from the EMP because it takes away from your objective. If you're trying to do an EMP on someone, you want to put all your payload into the device, not into all those other systems. So it don't matter. And you'll do far more damage to the country. And by the way, Soviet generals have testified, have told Americans that indeed they gave the North Koreans the EMP superweapon technology. And by the way, the EMP superweapons aren't the strongest nukes. In fact, the stronger nukes have so much shielding and to protect you against all the extra nuclear material and so much nuclear material just blocking other nuclear material. Actually, the optimum EMP superweapon is about 3 kilotons, smaller than the weapons we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which were about 15 kilotons. Oh, which happened to 3 kilotons is within the range of what Kim Jong-un was testing, by the way. So here we see the overflight over Washington, D.C. on the 16th of April, 2013. And guess what was floating around in the Gulf of Mexico, apparently in the same time frame. We worry about an EMP super attack basically coming off of some freighter floating out in the ocean. Somebody goes out and sets up a missile launcher on a freighter, shoots something up, and goes away, and you don't know where it came from. Our missile defense is aimed to the north, not to the south. So we worry about Russia, China. They're mostly going to shoot at us over the pole or from the direction of Korea. However, if this stuff comes out of the south, we've got no preparation, such as the Gulf of Mexico. Well, guess what? The Chong gang, a North Korean tramp steamer, had hidden under 10,000 tons of sugar these missile launchers, SA-2 missile launchers. They had 2 of them, fully developed missile launchers, and their launchers hidden under the sugar. For all we knew, they were doing practice runs in the Gulf of Mexico on 16 April 2013. Well, guess what else happened on 16 April 2013? The Metcalf substation that powers San Jose, California, was hit by some kind of practice run, dry run practice of an attack. Odd, strange. You know, we do believe that, in fact, it's in the doctrine of a lot of our so-called friends, enemies, that if they attack us, it'll make it a multi-pronged attack. There may be terrorists. They may hit us with strategic weapons, cyber attack. If they're going to attack us, they're going to throw everything at us, especially if they're war. They want to make sure they hit us hard. They're going to bring the United States to its knees, take down the power grid. There's several ways to do it, and they may be trying several at one time if they choose to do that. Of course, that would be a crazy thing to do. But then again, maybe they think we're going to hit them. Especially Iran right now might be starting to think that. This is a CNN News report on that event, the attack on the power grid, the PG&E substation at Metcalf, California. So everybody focuses on cyber attack. You hear about cyber attack all the time. So I'm not really going to go into it that much here, other than the obvious fact that you could take down the grid with a cyber attack. Well, how would that work? Well, basically, they would switch power in such a way as to overload certain key power transformers and burn them out. That's how you could take down the grid with cyber attack. And again, this is already known information. Well, we have basically 3 power grids here in the United States. I mentioned that in my previous video. Yeah, Texas has their own grid. But Texas got to get involved in hardening their grid. Now, there's movement starting in that direction, and hopefully that'll see it through. And there's a lot of subgrids in this country. And it just so happens the states have regulatory power over the grids in their states. So we can do something from the state level, and I will talk about that more to come. Now, the basic structure of the power grid is this. You have the generation stations, then you have these large step-up transformers, and then it goes over long distance, being transferred at 345 up to, this chart don't show, but 750,000 volts. And in fact, I think that was mentioned in the previous video. Yeah, you can see there's some of these 765,000 volt power lines up here in this area. So they do exist. A lot of the power is being transferred on these 500,000 volt lines. You can see in Texas, they're using the 345,000 and up in the Midwest and some of the Northeast. And there's also a lot of these 230,000 volt power transmission lines. They're all very large, high power lines and very vulnerable. So anyway, the power goes to a step down transformer because that's too high a voltage for use, except by certain large customers who have their own step down transformers. Really large industries. Most industry is not going to take that kind of power directly in. So for all intent and purposes, you can think of the step-up transformers that take it from the generating station. It goes long distances out to other users. It has to be stepped down where it goes to other factories and homes. And this is just another depiction of the same thing, just kind of looking at it from above. So, of course, this goes down to show you your pole transformers and so forth. Well, the ones we're worried about are these substations, especially the large ones, not the residential ones. And this is a picture of one. These things weigh 200 to 400 tons apiece, and they're as large as a house. Some of them, lots of them. There's thousands of them in that category. Now, I'm going to show you a mix of pictures. Inside, you have these coils. Transformers are made out of coils, so they can transform one voltage to another. So you have coils within coils, and that's how they accomplish that. Well, these coils are all hand wound. These are all custom built because every application is a little bit different on every grid, and it takes skilled technicians to wind these things. And it also takes, by the time you place an order, 18 months before you receive it. And here's one on a ship being shipped to its destination. That's not a small one. You can see it's got a guy standing on top of it on the deck of the ship boat. And here's a trailer, a freight trailer carrying one. And you say this is a special, really long, large trailer with lots of wheels on it. And that's one of your larger, probably about a 200 ton transformer, maybe a little bit larger than that. It's, I think these cars are called Schnapples. No, don't quote me on that because it's one of those names I don't always get right. But there's only maybe a dozen of them in the United States. And the same way for these truck, well, this transformer is not as big. It can be carried by a regular semi with a big trailer. Again, that trailer, if you notice, that's more than an 18-wheeler. But here's what I'm talking about. Here's a really large ones. Look at all the wheels on this trailer. And there's only about a dozen of these. So there's only a limited capacity to do this. Now you see you got several trucks all together pulling this thing. One truck is not enough. It's heavy, large. And just look at all these tires here. And this has got like a big dump truck looking truck pulling it. So that'll give you some idea about the size of these transformers. They're huge, and it takes a lot to move them and transform them around. So that is why it's so difficult to replace these transformers. I'm not going to go through the rest of this presentation here today. I'm going to present more of this in the future. But what I want you to know is that these transformers are the vulnerable part. They're vulnerable because they're hard to replace and they can be burnt out, and it takes a year and a half to replace them at best. But that is saying that the plants to produce them are working. If we've had a worldwide solar coronal mass ejection, they're going to be burned out too. So you got to fix the plants before you can fix the power grid. Well, to fix the plants, to build these elements, you've got to have power to do that. You got to have vehicles rolling and things to get supplies in place. There's not going to be any fuel. How do you get these things done? How do you get this stuff started? How do you jumpstart society when there's no money? There's no fuel. How do you order stuff today without the internet? You go in any store today and all the cash registers are electronic. All the inventory systems are electronic. All the ordering systems are electronic. People don't even know how to order things without going to the internet anymore. The paperwork trails that we used to use don't exist anymore. I mean, you may not even know how to look somebody up. How do you call them? Well, how do you call them without a phone system? Because phone systems require power. Maybe you send smoke signals. I mean, you got to get back. We get most of these transformers from South Korea and Germany. Although, fortunately, a plant has started in Montgomery, Alabama, which is a subsidiary of South Korean company Hyundai. So again, they're South Korean, but they do have a plant in Alabama that will start making. They're starting to make some of these, but not at the rate it would take to replace thousands of them across this country. So this is a difficult thing to fix, very difficult, and it's going to take months, years. It's estimated if we lose all of them, it would take 10 years, but that's based on things working so you can put them in place. To be honest, I don't know how we do it. The best thing we can do is not have to face that. And that's why I'm in this, because I'm hoping that, one, we can keep the power grid from going down, but two, until we can make sure the power grid is secured and hardened, we need to have a plan in place to make sure that the fuel can be maintained at the nuclear power plants to keep them from smoking off. I'm going to cover that in my next video when I talk consequences, all the things that can go wrong. And so you definitely want to watch that video. So pardon me. So I'll just, I'm going to give you a quick go through to see some of these charts that I'll be talking about in the next video. And hey, this is really all about hope in the end. Hope, inspiration. Yeah, okay, that's a far-flung thing from Green Greg's, right? I'm gonna start another channel. I'm gonna call it Galactic Greg's. How about that? So I can talk space stuff on that channel. But this channel is about how you can prepare yourself for bad times that may be coming. There's a lot of people worry about a grand solar minimum, that we may have crop failures due to cold weather as opposed to warm weather. Of course, some people will get crop failures due to warm weather. I'll be here to tell you how you can grow your own food, indoors, outdoors. I'm gonna cover how to grow things organically, without power, with power, how to make your own power eventually. We'll cover a lot of topics on this channel. I'm gonna do a whole lot on worm farming, aquaponics, microgreens, and gardening. And I'll cover market gardening, how to make a living doing this stuff. And I have a worm farm. A worm farm is the best. It is the best prepper industry when we're in a world that you don't have power and people can't get fertilizers to grow the garden. Well, guess what? Worms cover that for you. Worm tea, worm castings, and they also help you with your garden. So if you want a garden and you want your own source, worms are the answer. So if you want worms, go to my website, greengregs.com. I'll put a link to that below. So greengregs.com. You can get worms and start your own garden and know that you can grow your own fertilizer and develop your own, just from your waste, from your yard clippings, from your kitchen waste. You can develop great fertilizer for your garden and worm castings. Beat anything you buy in the store. Be totally organic, so you'll know what you're getting. You don't have to worry about the chemicals or whatever's in it. You'll know what it is, and more importantly, you can grow your own. So keep that in mind. And I'm not here to scare you. So I'm just here to prepare you. Don't be scared. Be prepared. We can get through this if we work on it. But my first hope is that we don't have to face it. And know this, Whatever you think the state of the deep state is, and any guys inside that might do an inside job, there are a lot of good guys inside too, especially the rank and file working Joes in these agencies. They want to do the right things. I just showed you the card for the head of the EMA in the state of Alabama. I know Brian Hastings wants to do the right thing. I've talked to him. He's on board. He's working to try to get our power grid defense going. And I know people from the Air Force and Army and some other agencies that are interested in making sure that this don't happen to us. Now, what they're, that's not saying there may not be rogue agents somewhere that may have nefarious plans in mind, but that's what everybody thinks. It comments to my comments, and that's why I'm talking about this. But in any event, the key thing is we can work together to stop it from happening if we work fast enough. Hopefully, that is my hope. As long as I have breath in my lungs, as long as you have breath in your lungs, we have hope. Excuse me. Yeah, coughing the breath out of my lungs. Isn't that funny? Again, I'm going to show you in the next video what the consequences can be, and then I'm going to go into what is being done and what you can do to make sure that this is covered, because really and truly no one's taking the adequate steps to harden the grid, not yet, but we can push it now. We are at an opportune time. People are getting aware of this, and we can push it to make it happen. I can show you how we can do that, and I can also show you how you can prepare individually for this or whatever else may ail us. And I'm going to do other videos in this series after that fourth one I mentioned. I'm going to do interviews. That's my hope, to do interviews with various people involved with this, and I'm going to do videos on prepping. I'm going to show you how to live outdoors. I'll show you how to bug in and how to bug out. At least my versions of it, what I think is the best way to. So you're going to hear from me about prepping and growing your own. That said, that's enough for tonight. I know that we went a little bit long tonight. The rest of these in this particular series should be shorter because I had to cover a little bit more material tonight. And I thank you for watching. But do subscribe to the channel and bang the bell for update notifications. Thank you. And hope to see you again for my next video.